Hey everyone, Grant here for the Flame Learning channel. In part 1 of Conforming in the Flame 2018 products, we looked at the basic conform, where the sequence assembled and automatically linked to its media. This does happen sometimes, but it's not always the case. In part 2, you'll go through a more advanced conforming example of what could potentially happen and how to deal with it. If you would like to follow along, please click the link in the YouTube description to download the media. Alternatively, if you're watching the podcast version of this video, then type the displayed link in your favorite web browser. Once more, you'll be starting in a clean desktop, and please switch to the Conform view. To start the Conform, you go through the same steps as in part 1. Right-click in the events list and choose to load a new XML, AAF or EDL. In the file browser, navigate to the downloaded media and go into the advanced example and enter the AAF directory. Double-click on the AAF and you can verify its metadata. As I mentioned in part 1, if you want to resize the resolution of the sequence on import, just change the resolution from File to Select Resolution. You can manually enter your resolution or copy the resolution settings from a piece of media. Change the setting back to Resolution from File. You also have 3 assemble options that give you a little bit more flexibility as the sequence is built. Keep Clip Name controls how segments are named in the sequence. When it's off, the segment naming will match what was done in the offline editor. If it's enabled, the name of each segment in the sequence will be renamed to the file name it links to. So preferably, it's off by default. Keep Source Settings allows you to use the source color metadata from R3D Media. This is also off by default. Finally, you have Mark Unknown Effects. This is on by default and it is quite important when conforming a sequence. For instance, it's not technically possible to translate every effect coming from an AAF or XML. So instead, this option will allow Flame to place pink markers in the sequence detailing missing effects. The remaining options for linking and searching media were covered in part 1 of this series. Click Import. In the Conform view, the newly imported AAF, XML or EDL for that matter will be opened by default. When a sequence is opened, all its entries will be displayed in the events list. The issue is that even with the original file paths, as well as a local search, Flame was unable to find the media. So each entry has a cross icon indicating that media is missing, or what we call unlinked. Now scrolling horizontally through the events list, there is a ton of metadata per entry. Most of this information can be edited and tweaked if that's all it takes to fix the conform. However, one of the easier approaches is to define the search location of the media and then match the media to the sequence. Click the Search Location button. The file browser appears again, and navigate to the MXF folder of the downloaded media. This could be on another drive or even somewhere on the network. Now you don't select any media. Just select the MXF directory and press Set. Back in the Conform view, all the potential conform media is loaded at the top of the media panel. Now that you have the media and the unlinked sequence, let's examine what properties can be matched up. Click the Match Criteria button to call up the floating window. You can leave this window open, and whatever settings you change will dynamically update in the Conform view. So in my Match Criteria window, the only link Flame is looking for is based on the file name. Active enables the specific match criteria, and strict means that the file name has to match exactly. Let's see why this does not match up. Scroll the events list to the file name column, and you'll see that every event entry is red. So the AAF references a bunch of file names with a MOV extension. Now hold Alt and click on the media in the Media panel to see their properties. Straight away, I'd like to point out that the file names are the same in the beginning, but have extra characters at the end. The file extension is also MXF, indicating a different file format. This is a typical case of when the sequence references the original QuickTime media, but the supplied media is transcoded within an MXF wrapper. This edit was done in Media Composer. However, mismatching media is not unique to Avid. For instance, you might receive a sequence referencing proxies from any editing application, and now it's your task to reassociate the sequence with the original high-resolution media. So this is when you search for common metadata to establish the link. Coming back to the match criteria, there are a few things you can try. Firstly, the first few characters of the file name are identical in the media and AAF. With strict mode enabled, these files are disregarded because they are not a perfect match. Go ahead and disable strict. The events list updates, and there are lots of multiple matches and a few exact matches. In the advanced column of the match criteria, Flame is currently only considering the first 7 characters of the file name as a match. If you click and drag this value, you can increase or decrease the number of characters considered by Flame. Pushing beyond 10 characters totally ignores all the files. So set Flame to consider a maximum of the first 10 characters of the file name. Now the number of exact matches has improved, but it's still not good enough. To zone in on the precise matches for the conform, you can introduce more matching criteria. The most common one I would recommend is source timecode. Enable the option, and most of the events should find a precise match. This is indicated with the tick icon. The multi-icon means that Flame has found multiple matches for a few events, and that will need sorting. As a side note, notice how strict is automatically enabled with the source timecode. For a lot of the match criteria, these values must be exact, therefore strict is always on. Now you don't need to close the floating window to start linking. Just click Link Sources, and the sources that have precise matches are linked up. So you can always change your match criteria as you work, and link media where necessary. Now linking sources after finding a match may feel very manual, but there is a setting in the Options pull-down menu to auto-link the media as soon as the match is made. You're very welcome to use this, but I personally like to verify the matches before linking the media. Now as a tip, if you want to keep your match criteria settings, you can add it as a preset, or even click the Close button. But if you click Cancel, any settings you may have made while the window was currently open will be lost. So you can see a full breakdown in the events list of what is linked and what is not. If you want to hide any linked entries in order to focus on entries that need work, just hide the linked entries. Secondly, I want to point out another setting in the Options pull-down menu. Filter potential matches is very useful to only show the matches for the selected entry in the Conform section of the media panel. Ensure that it is enabled. Now if you had more media in another location, you can keep setting new search locations and linking to the media. If the media is already in the Flame desktop or library, you can right-click on that element and set it as the search location. Normally, the sources reel is the default search location before you set a new one. So you can search outside or inside of the Flame workspace for matching media. Now the remaining 3 entries indicate that Flame has found 2 matches for each event and does not know which one to use. If you didn't edit the original piece, chances are you don't know either. To help us establish which shot to choose, you have been provided with an offline reference. Switch to the Media Hub and navigate to the offline directory in the downloaded media. Here is the offline reference clip with burnt-in metadata. Drag that into a reel on the desktop. Now switch back to the Conform view. To perform a continuity check, you need to add another version track to the sequence. Use the up arrow to move the positioner to the beginning of the sequence and ensure that snap is enabled for the timeline controls. Drag the offline clip into the sequence and drop it onto version track 2. Now you can toggle the view priority between the version tracks and you will see the player update. So you can flick between the reference and the conform. What is even more handy is to click the compare button under the player controls. By default, you get a vertical split in the player between the version tracks, and this is great for doing continuity checks within the sequence. If you want to adjust the comparison settings, click the Player Options pull-down menu and choose to edit the compare modes. This pop-up window is full of different compare settings, and you can choose how you would like to compare the version tracks. Now another aspect which is not so obvious is that when compare is enabled, even if you have not linked the media and you only have a match, Flame will temporarily use the matched media as part of the conform. To make sense of what I've just said, click the first entry with multiple matches. Looking at the comparison, it looks like this is the correct media. However, just to be sure, you can use these buttons to audition each of the multiple matches for this event. So you can click between the matches, and once you have found the right one, just click the link button under the player controls. This will link the media and automatically shift the positioner onto the next unlinked entry in the events list. This will also switch the player to only look at the source and not the sequence. So a good tip is to switch back to the record view with the tab and pin it to the viewport. You can now go through all the entries and link up the correct media. When your sequence is completely conformed, the events list will tell you that everything is linked. Remember to unpin the record view and disable the compare mode. Go to the sequence tabs and change the primary view to version track 1. This will display the conform and not the offline reference. You can either delete the offline reference or leave it for future comparisons. If you're keeping it, I suggest locking the track so it doesn't go anywhere. Now switch to the timeline view. The last remaining subject to point out is the markers in the sequence. The pink markers indicate that an effect was not correctly translated in the conform. Flame has applied the appropriate VFX tools to get started, but you need to do the rest. The other colored markers are comments that were added in during the offline edit in order to pass a message on to you. So that's the conform done, and I hope I've provided you with enough information to assemble your sequences and link to their media. Please remember that Flame 2018 supports AAF, XMLs and EDL formats from a range of products, so please check the online documentation for a list of supported products and versions. Be sure to check out the other features, workflows and updates to the Flame 2018 products. Comments, feedback and suggestions are always welcome and appreciated. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to the Flame Learning channel for future videos.